Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, as well as our guest lecturer members Vite Ramen and Full Grammar Alchemist. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers! Welcome back after a long week of Force of Will to your favorite ever live Force of Will podcast. It's Office Hours, featuring myself, DMO73, who is on record saying LaCroix is bad, and I'm joined as always by Paul Reisman.
Ooh, shadow.
We've been playing a lot of Silk Song, like everyone else in the world. And Mike Rance, back from Hungary.
I'm the one who says about LaCroix. I am back from Hungary, and boy, are my arms tired.
Classic.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Airplane food. What's up with that stuff?
What's up with that stuff? We are here. We are glad to have you here. If you like what we're doing, want to consider supporting the channel, click that join button down below. Otherwise, we're just glad that you're here, chatting it up with us in the chat. If you have any questions for us, today's kind of a lighter fare episode. We haven't really had any news, but we have been jamming games. And if you are actually a channel member, you can go watch our first feature match of Paradox format now. Not obviously right now, you're here, but like you can go after this video and go watch it, because we have it on the channel early for all of our members. Other than us, we can get it posted on Wednesday. We're trying out Paradox format, and Paul, I kind of dig it. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's a different feel now.
Yes,
that's what I will say. It's a different feel than it was even just a set ago.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. It has felt like we have to think differently. Paul and I are being reminded of cards that we forgot about or had binned away and need to bring back out, which is always fun. Cough, cough, soul absorption, cough, cough.
Very good.
And, it's exciting stuff. Grey Grumbler, do we even know the name of the next set in Evil Cluster? Nope. The only thing we know right now...
This just in. It is Catacombs into the Raven's Descent. That's the next set.
No. The only thing we know right now is that there's the mini set included as like box topper packs or whatever called Antechamber of the 10 Dimensions, ATD. It's the 25 card mini set. We know that it's going to be somehow in box toppers. We know that it's going to be available for players at Worlds, and we have zero other details. Oh, and we know there's a Reunited with Fox card in it. So clearly we're in the pandering to Jeremy stage of set development, which I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
And we also know that there's a card that reunites with Athenia.
And there's a Reunited ruler with an armament deck. So Electra and other rulers with an armament deck, whatever that means. It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
But tonight we're going to be talking about kind of our experience play testing with Paradox in mind. Specifically want to talk about our experience utilizing the new rulers and get into a little bit of deck building philosophy, which we're going to bring Mike to the table for that one, because I have been pleasantly challenged by the deck building of the new set. I have not played to try to build Matilda or Valgot yet because I want to focus on the students with the pacts. But I will say that an interesting challenge has come up that deck lists on paper, more so than I think any other time in Force of Will's history, have a much hazier translation to actual gameplay than I have experienced in the past. I think our deck list that you saw for Nero, Diabolos, and Belphegor were like came to the table after multiple rounds of building the deck, talking about the deck, changing the deck, trying the deck, changing the deck, talking about the deck, trying the deck, playing the deck, trying to a lot of the times when we've looked at previous rulers, it's like, okay, here's the obvious core, and then we'll splash in whatever tech we want, and then we'll splash in whatever utility we need. And that's not been the case here. It just like doesn't translate, and maybe it's just paradox or whatever. So we can talk about it. But and that's been my chance, and I'll toss it over to Paul next, and then we'll go to Mike a little bit there too. Is there's not as clear of a through line from paper to execution. There's more, actually, I think, more meat and potatoes to the process of the actual games themselves and like trying a deck out, which I think
Hmm.
is interesting. Paul, has you been? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say I very much have the same experience of like playtesting the deck has a lot more value to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you and I kind of said before this whole podcast the the feel of decks on paper, it doesn't look very clear as to like, is this a good deck or is this a bad deck? But I've kind of always had that experience of Force of Will. I've always been like, I can see where this card in some context would be good. I can see where this card would be kind of generically good, or I don't see how this card could be good, and then it ends up being a lot better than I think. This individual cards this time seem like when they come together, they're more than the sum of their parts, but that isn't entirely obvious.
Yeah, I
So
would
when I
agree.
put cards together, it's like, huh. I guess that ended up working out more than I thought. Weird. That's been my experience. I mean,
Yeah,
just with the two lists that I've made. Matilda has been completely different. I would say specifically this is specific to the students.
yeah.
The students
I
are a
think
little bit
with
different.
I think the pacts carry with them a lot more like nuance and influence on actual gameplay than we initially thought they were going to. And it's kind of really satisfying to like try to figure them out. It's like a really fun puzzle. I will kick it over to Mike here. Obviously, in the context of we're talking about playing with the students, you haven't been playing with the students, it's fine. But in your mindset, that feedback loop that we've seen in previous eras of Force of Will, where it was paper success, very clear through line, very easy and obvious to see what the line was and how a deck would operate, versus having an idea, needing to really workshop it and play it to really solve it, and then finding the end point. Like, like which of those do you think you prefer? Which of those do you think is more rewarding? Like, what's your kind of experience on that? Just as in general, not necessarily specifically to like what we're dealing with right now.
Well, I'll kind of rebut on the idea that like deck building needs more, you know, testing past the paper at this point. If you want to speak to that,
Sure.
um, I've remember some eras where like cards that were not clear, even from Forceful's beginnings, cards that were not clear that they were going to be good, ended up taking everything by storm. Like I'll even think back to, post Twilight Wanderer, Alice's World combo decks, where like Adam Brawley suddenly became like the biggest thing after Necrolance was thought to be the best deck for like months and months at that point. And then people are just like, oh, by the way, we can just raw dog a full turn of wombo combo, create new mana, and then end on a turn skip that will just end the game immediately. And it's like the moving pieces in that deck were so bizarre. And I even think back to like the deck that the Wonder deck that Joey and I brought to Worlds 2018 that got Gretel banned the first time around, which was just like the moment Einherjar summon came out and Gretel was able to just be brought back from the grave for 0. So your Planting Beans, Dark Atlas wasn't around at the time, but other sack outlets like that turned into another Adam Brawley combos, which was like more of the same. And once you start kind of getting that sort of, okay, this card seems good, this loop seems good, what what is the smallest sum of parts that we can put to this combo that lets us add in something else? And like with the students, some of your deck slots are already taken up because of the pacts or whatever they're called.
Yeah, the pacts.
So you have a little bit of that listed there. So that's like what, 7 slots
7 slots
is
minimum.
the
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So no, 7 slots there. Good cards that are just staples of the format for whatever colors you're splashing in. You want to give like a little like bucket of them essentially, and then like the meat and potatoes of what your deck wants to do becomes like what's the kind of like core competency with that. I notice also more frequently recently. I'm not sure if this is just a trend with the players that are playing the game right now, or if this is something with how consistent the game has become. But I do notice that a lot of deck lists that I look at have a lot of 3 ofs, not as many 4 ofs as there used to be years and years ago. And I think
Yeah.
that is sort of that like on
Two-
paper.
2 ofs and 3 ofs, you'd be it's like 2 ofs and 3 ofs, and strangely being at 41 cards, right? You're like, this
Yep.
feel 41 or 42 cards, and sometimes you're like, oh, this shouldn't work, and you're like, yeah, but we ran it and it works, like that kind of thing. I do agree with you on that. Like paper deck lists, I think have gotten a lot more. I think I've gotten a lot more the freedom to get techie, the freedom to get kind of loosey goosey with your numbers, other than just like straight 40. Here's our bet, here's full play sets and everything else. I think has opened up a lot, which I think is really interesting. And I think the pacts also kind of force that a little bit in such a way, especially certain ones.
There's also a lot more power in individual cards than there used to be.
That's true.
And I think like the moment you see one of your cards, like you don't need to see two unless you're a Uranus deck and you want to see 2 Uranus at the start of your turn, so that you can go and like that'll happen. But like you don't want to see like 3 Lawrence in your opening hand. Like that's just crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Yo-Yo says consistency versus versatility is definitely a thing. I would add in consistency versus versatility versus resiliency. I think is the kind of trifecta there of deck building, because I think there's an element of being versatile but also being resilient, right? Is the idea of like, I want to be playing something that is hard to interact with. Like I want to be playing something that will have strong survivability. It will be able to it will be able to eat up more resources than my opponent is necessarily wanting to commit. I think a really good example of that is Pack of Hounds right now. Like that card is versatile. That card is not necessarily versatile, like it's doing one thing and it's doing one thing very, very well, but it is resilient. That card is absolutely resilient. And so, especially in the Paradox format. And so it's like the strength of that card comes from how sticky it is. And that it's not the only super sticky card, right? But I do think, Paul and I had this conversation earlier. You're going to see it a lot in our Paradox matches of any deck that Paul and I play that has green in it. We're probably playing Woos. Like Woo Sha Woo and Power Suit is probably in most of the decks that we're playing for Paradox with green base, mainly because of versatility and versatility and consistency. Like we're playing probably 3 Woos because we want to see it consistently. And what it does, it actually has a lot of versatility, because not only can it clear boards, but it has belligerence and it's a 3-drop, so it can also attack wardens, right? So now it's got kind of 2 things that it's trying to do. It's trying to clear boards and attack wardens, and if you get really good, it can do both in the same turn, because you can like clear a board and then have it swing into a warden. Like that's the kind of thing that we're going to start to see. And on paper, it's hard to see necessarily. Like if we I imagine like thinking about like a Mario Kart, like look at this cart and like look at the sliders kind of thing. It is, I think, in this environment, especially with the pacts, it's hard to see what those levels are on certain cards about like how consistent is it, how resilient is it, how versatile is it, that you think it's like, oh, this is so insane, and then you actually test it and you're like, oh, actually that's not nearly as good as I thought, or this card's like, oh wow, I didn't realize how insanely good this card was, that kind of thing. For instance, Paul and I think a good example of this is Crystal Heart Slime. Paul and I were playing in the pre-release. Crystal Heart Slime with this was this absolute behemoth in limited, and we were like, oh, clearly it might not be as good, but we can still like try to jam it. And I played like 2 games with it in the deck, and I went, this card is awful in constructed. Like it does nothing of what I wanted it to do, and it got cut. But like on paper, when I was looking at it, I was like, oh, this is good to have. And then actually playtesting it didn't turn up that well.
An example of that for me was Nightheart. Like everyone was like, "Oh, I love this card. I think it's so good." And I'm like, "Sure, but I have to outnumber to get value off of it. So like it's not really necessarily that good." But then playing it in Nero, it was like, "Oh, so like the outnumber is actually live a lot more than I thought." And it does surprisingly die a lot more than I thought it would. So
Yeah.
like it just comes back. Um and so like recognizing like, oh, okay, this card is kind of actually good. I
Yeah.
just didn't think it would be. Um One thing I would add into the consistency, versatility, and resilience debate is impact. Because like, sure, you can play a Reasonable, it's gonna stick. How much of an impact is that card gonna have?
Sure. That's very
Right?
fair.
Like, does that card actually do anything in the environment? So I'm going to turn our triangle into a rhombus.
Yeah. But I think the one thing to me to kind of go back to the conversation is, especially with the packs and in the paradox environment, is I
Mhm.
feel like there's a lot of fog of war on a lot of cards that
Oh yeah,
seem very clear what they would be, like what shape they would have there of the four categories, but then you actually get into testing and it looks a lot different.
yeah.
So which has
There's not
been
a lot of tentpole cards, you know. Like,
yeah,
there's not a lot of like, oh wow, this is definitely like going to shape the metagame in the way that like a card like Grendel or Dorian would
right.
when it was released. It was like, oh, these are really really good. But then like, I don't know, like Hollow, he's all right.
So I'll take it back to Mike here with this kind of conversation about like the realm of exploration. Is do you prefer an environment where there is that need to evolve and test and play and go, or do you prefer it to look a little different? Like in your general
Uh,
philosophy of like enjoyment of the fullness of a card game, like is like what kind of space do you
I
want to prefer to explore?
I want to explore a space where I can play around with what I could consider diamonds in the rough or even hidden gems at a certain point.
Sure.
Because I do think that card games by design, especially ones where it's collectible and you can open packs and you have the commons, the rares, the epics, whatever you want to call the format. Like obviously, super rares, Marvel rares, they're going to be pushed. We know that. Like
Yeah.
that's just they're either pushed or they're integral to the gameplay of a specific ruler. And if you want to play that ruler, you need X amount of that specific SR
Yeah.
or MR. In the case of hidden gems, where it's like the line is more blurred nowadays with Force Will, just because we do get very powerful normals now, and the
Mm-hmm.
just average power level of a card is much higher. So the chance to find a diamond in the rough is much higher now, which does make it a much more difficult atmosphere to be playing what people consider the best deck.
Sure.
I don't think there's been a quote unquote best deck in Force of Will in years because
Yeah,
people are constantly evolving
I would agree.
and constantly finding new tools. Because the general power level is much higher, so the outliers don't stand out and aren't just like, oh, okay, this is clearly just like this isn't just Prisia, Levitine, Sacred Elf, Death Scythe. Okay,
Go.
go.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Guess
I
I'm
also
playing Fox.
yeah,
It's like,
I also think that there is something to be said about this kind of gets into the second topic that I wanted to talk about tonight. If you have I will say this before I go into that though. If you have questions or anything else that you like want to share or ask us about, this is also kind of a mailbag episode.
Get in the comments,
So
gang.
get in the chat and ask us any questions if you want. Um,
mhm.
I do think it's been interesting to me to look at deck lists over the past year and the discussion and some of the polarity of some of the discussion, and it makes me wonder what level of investment are people doing into pure exploration of the card pool, right? I do think that there is I do think that there is an element of timidity. I want to say, I don't want to put it off. I think that there are maybe just like people are drawn to very specific clear power hitters, but I think that to Mike's point, as I think there's a lot more diamonds in the rough than people are realizing exists, or aren't feeling driven to go hunt for. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like there is an element of a lack of drive to go hunt for the diamonds in the rough, which is, I think, interesting to me. I'm wondering if why you think that might be. If I am I off base here? Because like I'll tell you, with my testing, people were like playtesting Fox, for example, right? I wrote off Fox for Paradox a while ago because I was like, oh, this will look way different. It looks really bad. We don't have the resources. When I was like looking through stuff and I like did a deep dive because I was motivated to find a deep dive, and then I found wetlands and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, let's actually like put in the time to test something and see how this works. Not just like write something off, but like actually try it. And then we ended up finding the deck that won Caseyville. So, but I also think that in general, the spark for that hunt, I maybe I'm just not seeing it as much anymore. And I'm curious if other people can speak to maybe even you, Mike, as well, or Paul, can speak to
Mm-hmm.
the drive of deck building, the drive of exploration, the hunt for those things, and maybe what might be missing, or maybe what drives you to do that kind of thing.
Mike, why don't you go first?
I would love to. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to like, as weird as this is going to say, the game having much higher power level and better cards, obviously, like a larger pool of good cards to experiment with will, of course, just kind of deter a certain like level of testing
Sure.
where it's like it feels like an insurmountable mountain to try and get over this to figure it out. But there's also this sense of like, I think I've mentioned this before on cast that FOW is like, at this point in FOW, this is one of the tightest games you can possibly play, where one misstep, one misplaced will can be spelling the difference between you winning the game and losing the game. And it's like, this rewards good play. We enjoy that, but it keeps things very tight. It keeps experimentation at a minimum. And some of the time, when you're in testing, you won't see that experimental card by the time the game ends, or by the time you've played out the deck the way that you envisioned it being played. Because again, when it comes to deck building, we're gonna have 3 to 4 ofs, give or take, where it's like the main core competency of the deck. And if you're playing 3 to 4 of a card and it fits in with your ruler, it fits in with your stones, you want to see those cards consistent. You want that game plan. You want that consistency of the loop. But again, card games being inherently random, you're not going to see it all the time. So at a certain point, if you have a handful of your experimental cards and you just miss your 3 out of 4 ofs, like you're not testing the cards out. They become
Mm-hmm.
a logical fallacy, and you don't want to run them because you had a game where you just got bricked by them. Which,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think that there's an element of like Occam's razor kind of that applies to like deck building and testing, that I
Yeah.
think over the course of time it's been like, well, the simplest solution is the best one, so I'll just go with this, as opposed to like, wait a minute, is that actually the best solution? Like, should I go experiment? Should I go everywhere else? That kind of thing. And I think to
Mm-hmm.
me, and so like I'm not knocking, like, let me be very clear, I'm not knocking that approach to deck building and competitive mindset. Sometimes when you're in the grind, you're just in the grind, right? And so it's just like, we've said this on the podcast for years. Sometimes it's better to just be the problem than try to solve the problem, right? But I do think that what's been interesting to me is that in an era with no clear problem, I still don't see that experimentation as much, and that to me is
Mm-hmm.
interesting, right? Because it's just like, well, there's not a clear problem, so you have a lot more freedom to maybe go and explore, but maybe it's being held back. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my vibe.
So I think there's a couple of things here. So one, what I'm noticing in this set is the design of it is such that my heuristics for deck building have been challenged,
Sure.
right? My understanding and my mindset around deck building has not fit in super neatly into the process of building these decks. Like even now, when I look at my Nero Diablos that, for members, just got featured on the channel today, like there are things that I want to do differently with that because I was like, oh, I missed these things that would actually be really good. In that sense, it's like, okay, so my mindset doesn't quite fit into the box of what this set wants me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, there's things I'm missing in general.
Sure.
I'm also a Johnny. Like I love creative deck building first and foremost. I love experimenting and exploring cards a lot more.
Spike. Spike.
Yeah,
Johnny's Unite, baby.
I'm a Spike who's wearing a Johnny hat. I'm a Spike with a Johnny hat.
Yeah. And I'm a Johnny who wears a Spike hat, right? Because like my thing is part of my creative expression is making the deck as good as it possibly can be,
Sure.
and like getting the plan to work and actually putting up a good fight, right? And if it ends up winning a tournament, even better, right? But first and foremost, it's all about creativity. And so for me, there is a drive to like kind of look around those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last thing would also be I see a lot more experimentation on the grounds at my locals in Ionia rather than the locals I have down in Odyssey.
Sure.
Or even from the conversation, like the secondhand conversation about folks who are doing competitive testing right now, right? In competitive testing, there's a very different mindset. Whereas like my folks in Ionia are like, these are just really cool cards. I just want to work with these. Right? I just want to see what these do. And so that kind of lends itself to a very different like approach to curiosity in card games.
Yeah, for sure. To kind of hit
those would be my observations.
To hit a couple comments here, Robert Strong, it depends on how you play the game. If you have tons of product, you may not have the drive, but if you have limited access to cards or financial can't get cases, maybe you're more likely to find hidden gems. That's very true, right? There's an element of, again, that Occam's razor kind of situation, right? Where it's like, well, if I have access to everything, sometimes I'll just gravitate towards the easy thing rather than get bogged down by the everything, right? Also depends on your locals, like Paul said. I agree with that too, Robert, for sure, 100%. Yo-Yo Fow says, instead of solving the problem, find your weaker matchups and solve those. Yeah, I think that's what I'm talking about too, is that like, in an era with no clear and present problem, I would think that we would see more experimentation on trying to find the world of the 60-40s and the 50-50s, right? And I think that there's a lot more space to that exploration than I think people give credit. But I don't know, maybe I just haven't seen that. And Logan, you bring a good point here. I think people might be focusing on piloting more so than on deck building, if that makes sense. That makes 100% sense to me, because I do think at its core, deck building, Force of Will is a game that really, really rewards skilled piloting. I think skilled piloting, I think, is hands down one of the greatest strengths here of Force of Will, right? A strong pilot can take a deck that doesn't necessarily make sense and pilot themselves out of some really crazy situations, right? But what I think there's an element too. I'll challenge you a little bit though, Logan, is that it feels like there's some reversal of that, where sometimes our strongest pilots are the ones who aren't doing the experimentation. So they're not letting the advantage that their strong play gives them the freedom to then get creative. Does that make sense? Because it does feel like the stronger of a player you are, you have more freedom to get creative because your natural play can then kind of buffer the creative space, right? Give you some room to experiment. so that's been interesting to me. Like, for instance, I think I I'll say this too. I have played in 2 side events. I think the second side event that I played in was significantly much more competitive, the one at Caseyville. But like, I brought Fox. I made it to finals, and I conceded finals, but I didn't win the finals 2-0. And it was just like, I consider myself to be a good pilot. Like I said, I am a spike at heart, and if I'm gonna test, I'm gonna test. But I do think that there was an element of like, I took advantage of the fact that I'm a skilled pilot, and I leveraged that into a ruler that I think other players who don't necessarily have the skill set wouldn't be able to pilot as successfully, right? Fox is a technically complex deck, incredibly complex. So much so that like, I think people aren't necessarily giving it the attention it maybe deserves because they're like not applying themselves with it. And so it leaves me in this wondering position of how much are we leaving on the table? Like, how many other rulers haven't been really fully explored by technically very skilled players to really see their full potential? And that, I think, to me, the reason why I'm thinking about that so much is because these pact rulers force me to get into that mindset of what am I leaving on the table, right? They force that thought process on me a little bit differently. And so it leaves me with a sense of, okay, well, this is really rewarding and engaging. Have we missed this anywhere else? Like, where is that? And that's my, I don't know, that's my thoughts.
Well, that's what creative constraints do in any scenario, right? Like, you can only work with these 3 colors now. Like, that concept is like, okay, then like, what do I have to work with? Because you have to like re-explore the entire Paradox card pool at that point. Because it's like, I want to do this, but I don't know. I'm gonna invoke the name of a Yugi tuber to explain this phenomenon a little bit. So MBT did a video probably like a year ago at this point.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Jank enthusiasts.
There was this concept of how metagames are shaped, and I feel like because there's so like folks are kind of like agreeing on what the metagame is and like kind of ruling out some things that could influence that metagame.
Mm-hmm.
So like at this point, the players are shaping the metagame more than the card pool is shaping the metagame.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So that's kind of what I'm seeing right now.
Shout out
So
to
really
shout
really
out to Bugbones here. Yo-Yo put a great comment here. I've noticed there's a big difference between a player like myself who wants to try every deck ever and rarely plays the same thing twice, and the power of Bug specializing in one specific ruler. I would liken that same kind of thing to the amount of time that I've invested into Fox. Viola, incredibly technically complicated. On first glance, Viola would be like, oh, this is easy. I'm cheating in things. I'm making you feel bad. Like, that's it. But when you actually spend the time to really dig into it, there is a lot of nuance and complexity and space to explore that ruler that, like, if you invest the time into it, the deck will innovate. I think it's the same thing with
reminds
Fox.
me of
Go ahead.
It reminds me of like the Yu-Gi-Oh players that literally created a spreadsheet when they were labbing DDD or DD or whatever it was back in like 2015, 2016, where it's like the deck was so technically complex that like there were 5 people labbing it constantly, and just like they knew what they were doing. The deck just wasn't as good as the decks that just kind of didn't need a brain to be piloted.
Yeah, for sure.
The difference is, and that's the difference between Yu-Gi-Oh! And this game, I would say, because I do play both, I dabble in both, but you can absolutely lab a deck in this game, and if you lab it enough and you know what you're doing with the deck, your win percentage will go up.
Yeah, 80%, 80% of the time you will notice the deck performs better and better and better. Now, some rulers are just like, no amount of lapping will save them. Cough, cough, reunion.
There's a
cough, cough. Like, there is a ceiling.
Ball.
Orb, we ponder in.
Oh.
But like,
Snorkel.
but there is a lot there. And so I think my takeaway from this is, I think again, there's nothing inherently wrong with the Occam's razor approach to meta and deck building, but the fun thing to me about Force of Will is that every ruler feels so unique, and even if they're complicated, that doesn't mean that they can't be workshopped and tooled into something amazing, and like use your player experience and skill and see exactly how that works, because the identity of rulers in this game is what makes this game so different. And so like I would encourage people to lean into it, especially now, because it's pretty dang rewarding. And so I just hope people do that more.
Something I will also say is that, like, especially with people being encouraged to play and like test more potential hidden gems out, like we've had a few years, correct me if I'm wrong, a couple of years, where Wander's been the only format. So the amount of potential hidden gems and the ability to actually test them out in an environment that was not hostile towards experimental cards was not really there.
Sure.
You know, I'm not going to say Wander is like a bad format by any chance. Like, obviously, I've toted it for years, but I do think that in terms of like testing out new things and finding new tech cards and new interactions, it's tough to do it in that format.
It can be, yeah, for sure. It's like you said, that it's that upward, it's that upward climb, right? Like it's a much steeper climb.
It's why I think that people experimenting in Paradox are going to be the ones to find these hidden gems and move them into the past. Because it's like, as somebody who was a very like a high advocate for New Frontiers and Wanderer having their own unique identities back in the day, and being somebody that would play New Frontiers for the tournament scene and then bring whatever I learned into Wanderer, like that's part of the reason that the Einherjar summon Gretel thing was just an immediate thing in the back of my head.
Right.
And the fact that it just kind of became something a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then, like, even going past that, just, trying to think of the best way to say this, but it's the more you can kind of understand what a card can do in like a safer space, or like look back on something at a time when it was, even like for Wander, going back to a time when a card was like not really used for anything but has a new purpose. It's like, I just think back to Jeremy popping into FowFest with Rachel's Smile in his Luminaries deck, and my brain just going, oh, that's terrifying. And it's like, yeah, of course it's terrifying, because that card was bad when the deck didn't have like a turn 2 win button, but suddenly here we are.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I do want to hit on this mailbag question from, speaking of Jeremy Lindley, saying, what do we think is the highest value card from the new set? If we're talking like are we talking, so I'll ask a follow-up in terms of like strength of the card, or are we talking like specifically card price value? Because I can look up card price value. Let's go find out.
Yeah, that's something you can just look up. I think he means like value in terms of what players will get out of it by experimenting and playing with it.
Yeah.
And obviously I can't speak to that because I barely know what the cards do.
I think there's actually a lot of excellent candidates. I don't think it's very clear as to like what card is good or bad, but like I will say I have really gravitated toward Grendel as one of the new cards as being very, very valuable. Just being able to swing in for 5 and hit a warden and just kill it is like, Jeremy's done it to me multiple times. It sucks.
It's true.
It sucks. I've done it to others. It feels great.
Yeah, I mean,
I will say that.
To me, I think it comes down to one of 3 cards as like the most value cards in terms of like this card I think is going to see the most widespread play and have interact and like have elements to it. I think that Defenders of the Lower Plateau, I think, is a card that is going to shape deck building. You just have it's going to shape deck building. I think Motionless Freeze is also another really huge one. It was very funny. We were doing some workshopping for some decks for some people at Locals this past Wednesday, and Paul was like, Motionless Freeze, you really think so? And then I went on like a 10-minute rant about how good Motionless Freeze is in the Rune deck, and Paul was like, oh yeah, actually that card's insane. And it's like, yeah, card's really good. Defenders,
again, another example of card that doesn't look good at first, but the longer you look at it, the more like, wait a minute, Wait a minute.
Yeah. So
Wait a minute.
motionless freeze, I think. Defenders, I think, as well. And I do think Thousand Fractured. I think, we've seen the
Yeah.
strength of Mirror, and especially in Paradox, suddenly removing Mirror and giving everyone a like quote unquote mirror, I think just has the influence of being able to cancel an activate ability, being able to cancel, one drops. Like it does force changes in deck building. So I think there's a lot of stuff that can be done. That being said, I do think that if you had to tell me to pick like cards from the set that I think have impacts, we're sitting at like 25 cards. Like I think because
yeah.
I think there's so much in this set that is worth exploring in Paradox and worth giving a try, in the realm, especially in the context of Paradox. I will say that I think that there are some approaches that I think on paper or like on application have fallen into just being maybe some kind of a trap. That there are cards that are some kind of a trap, and there are also other cards that like on paper don't look great, but then you put it in the right deck and you're like, oh wow, this is actually insane. For instance, for the Belphegor deck that I played today, I'll talk about it more and you'll see it on Wednesday if you're not a member. The Engraved Rune of Parasitic Healing, like I put that in there just because, and then like the more games that I got with it, I was like, oh, this card is actually like putting in
really
work,
good.
like really good. So it's just that like, again, to go back to what we thought, I think there's more diamonds in the rough in this set than I think we've seen in previous sets. There's a lot of clear, like, oh, these are good, but there's also a lot of room to experiment, which I think is really fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Fractured.
I would also do not sleep on Engraved Rune of the Setting Sun. That card
Yes.
is
Well, yeah, that card.
impactful.
That card is very good. Just in general. I also think like all five, all of the rulers feel very cool and like rewarding to play. I think that's so that's the other thing too, is for the past couple years when Paul and I divvy up rulers, there's a lot of time where it's really obvious for Paul and I who's going to play what, because like we naturally gravitate towards certain play styles or whatever, and so it's like very clearly I'm probably not going to enjoy this, so I'm going to give it to Paul because he will enjoy it, or Paul doesn't like this so that I'll play it instead and it's fine. I gotta say, this is like the first time where I really want to play all five rulers. Like I actually want to be trying them all out because they're really like the deck building experience is really rewarding and you can get really creative. It's just like everybody's so creative. You saw how we weren't supposed to do that, but we did. Like that's like the vibe, right? And
Yeah.
it's very fun. It's very fun. Demon Bet Collector is a 1-cost draw 3 on a body. Yep, for Valgot. Yep. Dorian, lots of cool cards. The Stillithion, the Pacts, Robert. Yeah, the Pacts. I'll say this: once you get used to the Pacts, they are pretty sick. They are a cool use of the extension rule and very thematic. So I've been, kudos to iSpy for the design of these extension rules. It's made for some pretty fun stuff.
This is exactly what I would want an extension rule to do. It's
Yeah.
just like vary your deck building rules.
Yeah.
Like I went in thinking Diablos was going to be the worst pact, and now I think it's one of the best.
Yeah, it's one of these things where like extension rules in the past. Where's your second Limericka pack? Hopefully next set. So I'll say this: extension rules in the past have been kind of like a modifier or a way to kind of like errata buffer old rulers, right? Crimson Moon Battleground was glorified errata to give all of them tag, right? Like Return of Judgment was a glorified like bonus enter effect for like doing these other things, right? The return ofs were essentially just like glorified extra text on these rulers in that kind of sense. Like the extension rule being absolute, like the extension rule for Robometa is literally just the rest of the text of Robometa on a different card, right? The extension rules this time around feel like a second identity, piece. Like they feel like a second separate identity. You have the ruler identity and you have the pact identity. And so then when you combine them together, you get this really cool experimentation space because everyone can kind of look a little different. And like Daumir Belphegor and Valentio Belphegor are going to look different. And you'll have the like Valentio identity cards and you'll have the Belphegor identity cards. And so it's this weird way to do, in a sense, kind of like tagging, but in a solo mode deck, which is really a really cool way to use that card type. I think it's really satisfying.
Yeah. I found some like really interesting strains in, like, for instance, Valentio. Like that's not edited and on the channel yet, but it's going to come up eventually. But I could see how, because I piloted Nero in Diablos, and I, spoilers, piloted Valentio in Diablos. And Diablos did very different things for both of those rulers.
Agreed.
Very different things. Fascinating. And so like Belphegor for Daumir and what Jeremy did was really interesting. But when I was looking at Valentio's package, I was like, oh, I can see how Belphegor would like naturally like create a win condition for Valentio in this, just because of what Valentio has accessible to him.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. That's been the fun for me too. And to your point, Alejandro, the XRs have a different design approach, and I'm sure it's the right one. Yeah, I think this space of like having extension rules be kind of an identity linchpin to modify deck building and not just glorified extra text for a ruler, I think is the right approach now that we've experienced both. And it puts me like really excited for what the future of what they have in store is.
Yeah. This feels a lot like what the spectating XR did for Reflect and Refrain. It's like you get this package with this XR, and then you have the rest of everything else Reflect Refrain can do. But you have to play this chunk in order to get the benefit of them.
The execution, I think, on these ones is a little bit stronger than the spectating one, because I think they carry
100%.
Because I think again, to comment on it, the spectating XR essentially just gives glorified. It makes you play this package, but it essentially gives glorified extra text to Reflected Refrain. It just kind of like slightly modifies them and then forces them to deck build in this way. These pacts have their own separate identity and provide very individualized buffs that are kind of independent of the ruler. So it's like having a second ruler. It just can't call stone, right? It just kind of provides extra benefit. So it's like they're weirdly a blend of extension rule and sub ruler, if that makes sense. Like these extension rules are a weird blend of like extension rule and sub ruler, and I think it's like the right mix, which is really fun. So exciting times.
To go back to like just the individual card discussion. Like I have a running list on my Paradox meta breakdown that's on Force of Wind. And I just in Wanderer or in Paradox, I'm just like, these cards shape my deck building. So like these are the cards I'm going to see the most. And all of the cards that we talked about, I would say Uppercut and Zaki's are definitely still on the table.
Oh, sure. 100%.
Format shaping cards too. So like let's definitely mention that.
Mainly talking about,
I keep those cards running list all the time. So
good stuff.
Yeah.
Mike, any kind of closing thoughts about, the realm of deck building, the decision to experiment versus go for the easy Occam's razor, like any kind of closing thoughts there?
Go dumpster diving. You'll find treasure.
Yeah, I agree. Not in actual garbage though, please.
Oh yeah, no. Just
Yeah,
literally
just, like,
go into your bulk,
needles.
go into your Vingolf 2 bulk, find a Martha Lipponen, put one in your sideboard and just sub it in every game. And apparently, every game you sub it into, you will just win. I can speak from experience for 3 exact anecdotal evidences.
So here's the interesting thing to me that I've literally done recently with the packs and stuff that I have not done in a while. I have literally done click these 3 colors, these colors exactly, this type of card, mass search, and just like scrolled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And like
literally,
and that
I
is not
just
something
looked
I have
at
done
the,
in a long time.
I looked at the spit demon, whatever its name is, the
Yeah.
little one that brings stuff back if you have a demon. There's no demon rulers or J rulers right now, but when we get one,
Valgot.
stonks. I'm telling you.
Valgot.
No, he's demonic,
Okay.
not a demon. Go ahead. Make sure you check ruler side, but I'm pretty sure it's both ruler side and J ruler side is demonic, not a
Oh,
demon.
you're right. You're right. He's demonic, immortal king, wicked spirit.
He's demonic.
He's demonic. There's no demon rulers and J rulers, but a little demon guy implies there might be.
Well,
one
it does.
in the
It does
future,
say.
which would
It
be
does
really
say
cool.
or demon J resonator. By the way.
No, yeah, but it specifically talks about there being a demon ruler. It didn't need that text.
Is Welser a demon?
Nope. Pretty sure he's an archmage.
He's a wizard. You're a wizard, Welser.
I got the
Cool.
horns though. I got the horns, man. Nah, not a demon.
Alejandro was like listening in. I knew he was. He knows.
He knows.
We do
knows.
know one of the new characters coming out, Valthrusa. That new character?
Who?
I think it's coming out in. It's.
Spinative?
I don't know. He's one of the new characters I've seen previews for in the Antechamber of 12 Dimensions.
Oh.
Yeah.
The other thing with the little demon guy is that it also prompted me not only to look up any demon J rulers that exist, but also what demon resonators could synergize with him. And I realized that there is a large handful of strangers that are demons, including
Mhm.
Azazel. And I think, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure there's some way to sack something to produce mana. I
Varkuzal.
don't know off the top of...
What was that?
Is that real?
Varkuzal is the demon that
Okay.
Paul was
Gotcha.
talking about.
For some reason, I thought that there's some kind of card that lets you banish a resonator to produce some kind of will. I don't know if that exists right now or if I'm just making it up.
You might be
But if
making
it
it up.
does exist, I might be. But if it does exist, Azazel, that little demon, and that card that would sack to produce black.
Diamond in the rough, baby.
So there you go. These are the things that you want to be thinking about. Go dumpster diving, find a normal, find some stupid garbage from like 5 years ago that synergizes with it.
Yeah, do it. It's fun. And on that note, card games are good. Some housekeeping for this week. Later this week, we will have the deck profiles for both Daumir and Nero. They will be talking about both the deck lists in Paradox, as well as what we would do to kind of update them or what we'd experiment with them in Wanderer. We're going to be doing that for the first kind of pass through as we go through it. You will also see, obviously, the feature match this week if you're not already a member. And also tomorrow, you're going to see Paul's Utsune's guide video. It's been a long time coming. I just realized the reason why you haven't seen it yet is because I forgot Paul uploaded it. So we'll be posting it.
Hey, let's go.
We'll be posting it
Jeremy
tomorrow.
Forgore.
Yeah.
Silk Song too good. Jeremy Forgore.
Yeah.
It was because that Utsune's video sucked, so we're just not gonna post this for a while.
Yeah. So we'll post it so that you have something to watch tomorrow. And then feature matches, and we'll go from there. So thank you all so much for watching. Great conversation, good questions tonight. And until next time, this has been myself, DMO73, and I've been joined as always by Paul Reisman
Stian Farloom
and Mike Rance.
Just never take 2 stops on a trip. Just take the 1 stop. Just take the 1 layover. You'll be fine.
Okay.
It's true.
Class dismissed.
Yay.